वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी 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 जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम राम राधा माधव की जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महाराज की नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome, devotees. We are reading Canto 3, the status quo, Chapter 9, Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy, Text 3. Nata para param yad bhavat bhavata swarupam ananda matram avikalpam avidyavacha pashyami vishvasajamekam avishvamatman bhutendriyatmakamadasta upashritosmi nata param paramayad bhavata swarupam ananda matram avikalpam avidavacha pashyami vishvasajamekam avishvam atma bhutendriyatmakamadasta upashritosmi nata param paramayad bhavata swarupam ananda matram avikalpam avidyavarcha pashyami vishvasajamekam avishvamatmam bhutendriyatmakamadasta upashritosmi Do you want to sing? Nata param paramayad bhavata swarupam ananda matram avikalpam avidyavarcha pashyami vishvasajamekam avishvamatmam bhutendriyatmakamadasta upashritosmi. Mataji? Nata param paramayad bhavata swarupam ananda matram avikalpam avidyavarcha pashyami vishvasajama ekam vishwamatmam bhutendriyatmakamadasta upashritosmi. Na, do not. Ata param, hereafter. Parama, O Supreme. Yat, that which. Bhavataha, of your Lordship. Sarupam, eternal form. Ananda matram, impersonal Brahman effulgence. Avikalpam, without changes. Avidya varsha, without deterioration of potency. Pashyami, do I see. Vishvasrajam, creator of the cosmic manifestation. Ekam, one without a second. Avishvam, and yet not of matter. Atman, O supreme cause. Bhuta, body. Indriya, senses. Atmaka, on such identification. Mada, pride. Te, unto you. Upashritaha, surrendered. Asmi, I am. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Please respond. O my Lord, I do not see a form superior to your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge. In your impersonal Brahman effulgence, in the spiritual sky, there is no occasional change and no deterioration of internal potency. I surrender unto you because whereas I am proud of my material body and senses, your Lordship is the cause of the cosmic manifestation, and yet you are untouched by the matter. Please hear the purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can only be partially known and only by the process of devotional service to the Lord. Lord Brahma became aware that Supreme Lord Krishna has many, many eternal blissful forms of knowledge. He has described such expansion of the Supreme Lord, Govinda, in the Brahma Samhita 533 as follows. Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam adyam purana purusham navayovanam cha vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhaktao govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is non-dual and infallible. He is the original cause of all causes, even though he expands in many, many forms. Although he is the oldest personality, he is never youthful. He is ever youthful, unaffected by old age. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be known by the academic wisdom of the Vedas. One has to approach the devotee of the Lord to understand him. The only way to understand the Lord as he is by devotional service to the Lord or by approaching the devotee of the Lord, who always has the Lord in his heart. By devotional perfection, one can understand that the impersonal Brahma Jyoti is only a partial representation of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, and that the three Purusha expansion in the material creation are his plenary portions. In the spiritual sky of the Brahma Jyoti, there is no change of various kalpas or millennium, and there are no creative activities in the Vaikuntha worlds. The influence of time is conspicuous by its absence. The rays of the transcendental body of Lord, the unlimited Brahma Jyoti, are undeterred by the influence of material energy. In the material world, also the initial creator is the Lord Himself. He brings about the creation of Brahma, who becomes the subsequent creator, empowered by the Lord. Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjalachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vichancha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Krishna Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpata Rubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna devotees, I'll seek permission from the assembled Vaishnavas that whatever I try to speak is in accordance of the parampara and what Prabhupada and the Guru work has taught us. This is a beautiful section of this Brahma's prayers starting this chapter, from the first verse. So we all know that Brahma was born. Cannot hear. Okay. So Brahma was born on the top of the lotus flower, which sort of sprouted from the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And we saw in the previous chapter that he actually goes inside the stem, tries to find out his source of his origin, and finally he couldn't find the source. And finally he does a tapa for 100 years. These are not 100 years of Brahma, but 100 years as per human calculation. That's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur clarifies. So he does that, and then finally he has darshan of the Lord. So in the last section of previous chapter, we were discussing about the beauty of the Lord. So basically, I think it's Maitri Muni who's describing the beauty of the Lord as seen by Brahma. So what Brahma saw is being described. And finally, after that, in chapter 9, Brahma starts praying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's been the culture, that when you receive someone, and especially when you're receiving Supreme Personality of Godhead, you have to offer the wonderful prayers. Even irrespectively, when we take darshan also, Prabhupada says that if you can't offer prayer, at least chant Hare Krishna when you take darshan of the Lord. So it's very important that when we take darshan of the Lord, we are still meeting Lord face to face, as we all know. So, Pratima Nahi Shakshat Rajendra Nandan. So, the deity form of the Lord is as good as the Lord himself. So, the prayers are very beautiful. They're very comprehensive. So, the first prayer, I won't go into all the details, but the first prayer, Brahma establishes that the Supreme Lord is the only knowable object. Basically, he says that that's the only thing which you need to know of. And there are various descriptions given. But Prabhupada starts the purport saying that the highest peak of ignorance of someone is that he doesn't understand the ultimate cause of cosmic manifestation. So the whole cosmic which is created, if you simply keep ignoring, that's the highest peak of ignorance. And Prabhupada goes and says that the scientists may look very, very intelligent, they may look very beautiful, very wonderful, but actually they are just the instruments at the hands of material energy. Because that material energy would make even the most impure and unreal thing appear real. So it's a very deep point which comes in the translation itself. So Brahma directly says that because of your material energy, even the most impure and the most so-called illusory thing appears as real as it can get. And I think this is something which we can reflect back, that how many times we get enamored by the things around us. How many times we just get completely overwhelmed with what we see. And if we sort of relate this back to chapter 17 in the Canto 1, when the bull, which is Dharma personified, was asked by Parikshit Maharaj that who is the cause of your suffering? It's very nice because Parikshit Maharaj wanted a statement of acquisition. He wanted the bull to clearly say that this is actually Kali personified who has been beating me on my legs. But actually, what Bull says? He says it's very hard to determine the cause of your suffering. In fact, there are a lot of philosophers who have given different conclusions on that. And he says some actually say that it's actually your karma which is the cause of your suffering. He says 4 things. He says it's your karma that causes you the suffering. Then he says that it's not the karma, it could be your deva, so it's the supernatural powers who actually control your miseries. Then he says that it's actually the swabhava, the nature which you acquired, the 3 modes and all, which causes you to, and we see 3 modes, they take us crazy, they drive us crazy. We've seen it left and right. We have passion sometimes taking over us. And finally he says that it's your own self, which means you as the independent self actually determine whether you want to suffer or not. And then he goes on and says that there are other philosophies which actually says that some thinkers actually say that it's caused by, basically it is there are other causes which he sort of comes to, but basically these are the 4 fundamental causes. He says it's self, karma, deva, and the Swabhav, the nature. But he says that actually none of this are the cause. It is my Supreme Lord, it's the Supreme Lord who is the ultimate cause. He's the one. Even the cosmic manifestation which is created by him, if you say even if that is the cause, right, the whole material creation which came about, even if that is the cause, then also that creation has come about by Supreme Lord. So he didn't want it to actually say that Supreme Lord. So he said that, Parikshit Maharaj, you are the very learned person. So better you decide with your own manishani, which is with your own intelligence. Because in fact, when Bull starts speaking, he first glorifies Parikshit Maharaj that because you come from a Pandava family, that's the reason you are asking me this question. You're showing this empathy and the love for me. And then, of course, so that's where he leaves it. And this is also a clear way to sort of draw the parallel that because we completely forget that the ultimate cause is Krishna. Not that we blame him for whatever happening around it, but basically we are part and parcel of him. So basically he's the ultimate source of everything. So that was sort of the background of the first verse, the first prayer which Brahma offers, which is very beautiful, that you are the supreme knowable. So even though scientists and all, they appear to be amazingly wonderful because they are the instruments at the hand of material creation. Because the material nature, just to sort of double click on that, just to make sure that the unreal things happen real, even scientists become one of the praman for us. I mean, we need a baseline, right? We are in a setup where we need a lot of references and cushioning and alignment to our logic and rationale. So even the whole setup gets created nicely. So that's what, Prabhupada very clearly says that they may appear wonderful, but they are actually the instruments at the hands of material nature. The next verse says that you are the original form. So that's the next prayer. And this is the third prayer. So I'll just give a bit of background of the second prayer also. So it says that you, the Supreme Lord, is the most original form. Because that's the main thing. So, and Prabhupada says in the purport that because he's seeing Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So Prabhupada says that Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, all of the three come from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And in that verse, Brahma also says that you are the Sata Bija, which means you are the father or the original source of all the Bija, which means during the day of Brahma, there are a lot of incarnations which are going to come about, which we all know. So we see that in the day of Brahma, there are 6 types of incarnations which Lord Chaitanya describes: Manvantra Avatar, the Yuga Avatar, the Guna Avatar, the Leela Avatars, and also all of them, they start appearing during the day of Brahma. All of them actually come from you. So that's basically what is being explained there. And Prabhupada also goes and clarifies in the purport that Vishnu Tattva is different from the Devatas, including Brahma and Mahesh. And we of course, when our second offense to the chanting of holy name basically says that to consider the names of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva to be equal or independent of the names of Lord Vishnu. So basically it is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita also a lot of times that these people are called as Pashandi or infidel. Not to be very strong about it, but basically Supreme has to be one, and we all know that the ultimate Supreme is, we can name it in whatever ways, but that's ultimately one Supreme. And in Vedic knowledge, it's described as Lord Vishnu and Krishna, which is the most appropriate name, as Prabhupada used to say, because that means it's all-encompassing. So the reason it was not because Prabhupada always used to say, we didn't name this as Krishna Consciousness Movement, or we don't just harp on Krishna, but that name is the most appropriate name you can give to the Supreme Lord. It doesn't matter. That's, if you see the etymology or the meaning of that word, it clearly explains it's all attractive, all encompassing. Because if something is all encompassing, it will be all attractive. So Krishna means all attractive, as we know. So that's the second verse. And this verse which we are at now, which is Na Ata. So this verse again, Brahma goes on and establishes a third principle in his prayer. And that third principle is that the first was that you are the only knowable thing. That's the first thing. So all the materialistic are going around and they're forgetting the main point. Second, you're the original form, which means from you comes Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh and all. And then third, he says that you are it's not your impersonal form, but your personal form is the ultimate thing. So I surrender onto your personal form. So we'll just go through the word to word a bit more into detail. So it says that Natah parama yad bhavat swarupa. So it says there is na ata, which means there is nothing param, which is hereafter. There is nothing param beyond the personal form which I am seeing. Because Brahma is having audience of the Lord, right? He's saying there is na ata param. So basically there is nothing which is beyond or param than what I see you. And which is Yad Bhava Swarupam, which is the eternal form which I'm seeing. It says Ananda Matram Vikalpa Avikalpam Avidya Varcha. So basically it says that it's full of bliss. Okay? Ananda Matram. As we know, Matram matlab just only that. So Ananda, it's full of bliss. And also Prabhupada translates it as impersonal Brahman effulgence. But if you see the translation, Prabhupada says it's eternal bliss and knowledge. Your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge, which I'm seeing, okay, is avikalpam, which is without changes, and avidya varcha, which is without deterioration. So there are a few things which are being mentioned here, that the Lord's impersonal Brahma Jyoti itself is actually non-deteriorating. We know that everything which we see in material world is deteriorating, right? Because of the factor of time, because of the material nature, it does deteriorate. It ever changes, it deteriorates. But impersonal Brahman, so two adjectives are used here, which is avidya varsha and avikalpam. So both of this basically establishes that if the Lord's effulgence is so steady and so unwavering, then the Supreme Lord, which is the source of it, will be even more eternal and even more. Because absolute truth, I mean, if you just go back to that concept, it has to be absolute truth at all times. You cannot just say, there is a very good explanation given for the first verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So I'll just detour that and I'll just explain that. So, there are two types of pramans. So if we know Janmadasya, which is the first verse, and there are a lot of characteristics of the Lord which have been described in that verse, right? That he's Swaraj and Avigya. Then he says that all this appears as illusory, like the desert. I mean, the mirage in the desert. And then finally it says that Satyam Param Dhimahi. So in that verse, Mahaprabhu explains to Sanatana Goswami that Satyam Param Dhimahi is actually the primary quality of the Lord. And then all these others are Tatashta qualities. The Swarup quality is actually Satyam Param Dhimahi, which means the Lord is absolute truth. But the others are actually not the absolute. They're basically, you can say, they're relative, but they are basically Tatashta, which is secondary qualities. And how do you take this? I mean, if you want to draw an example with this, it's very simple. A cow, how do you distinguish cow from other animals? So it is said that the cow, of course, has hump, but a lot of other animals also have hump. But cow has this twilik, which is basically a thick skin below his neck. So you would not see it in any other animals. You can see it sometimes like furry neck and all for some other animals, but cow's distinct quality is actually that twilik, that thick skin which is around its neck. Yeah. So that's actually the cow's distinct characteristic. So that is his primary quality. And then how do you understand secondary quality? So let's say if you say this is the Ram's, if there are three houses, and if you say which house belongs to Ram, you'll say, okay, you see that house where the crow is sitting or perching, that's the house of Lord Ram, or Ram, let's say, or Mr. Ram, okay? So the point which you're trying to say that that's the quality which has just got, that crow is there for a while, it has been exhibited for a while, it will go away. So you can always describe Ram's house from that perspective, but that's not the absolute. Sometimes we think that the absolute quality of Lord is that he is Avigya and Savaraj. Of course, that is there, that's his Tatashta quality. Yeah, but the main quality is the absolute truth. Everything stops there. So sorry to just take a detour, but that's what we're trying to discuss here. So basically, the supreme, the effulgence or the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is actually avidya and avidya varcha, and it's actually avikalpa. So that's the part which Brahma is sort of trying to describe about the Lord. Then I think he goes and says that Pashyami Vishram Shrajam Eka Vishwam Atmanam. So he says, I'm seeing you that you are the one who has Vishwa Shajam, which means you are the creator of cosmic manifestation. Ekam, which is one without a second. Avishwam, and yet you are yet not of the matter. Atman, which is basically the supreme cause. So here, Brahma sort of glorifies the Lord as that you are the ultimate creator. And I'm seeing it actually, because you created me. So already it's very obvious. It came out, and then now you have all the elements around me, and I need to go and take up the task of creating. So here, because the reason Brahma is making that statement is because of the fourth line, where he says that yet I see that you are actually the I see Pashyami Vishram Sajam Ekam. I'm seeing you creating all this, yet I feel Bhutendriya Atma Kadam. So basically, it says, still with seeing all this, I'm Madas. That's the word which is used. I am Bhutendriya Atmaka Madas, which means I am mad, thinking that I am the ultimate person because I have this body and have these senses. So on the account of my senses and body, I think that I am actually I'm getting very puffed up and proud. So again, this is prayer, right? This prayers, I was hearing a devotee say that these prayers are very important for us because our Sampradaya Acharya, which is Lord Brahma, is actually sharing his realization. So we all know that ultimately it's the realization which we have to develop. You can see Lord by penance, Prabhupada says, but you can understand Lord by realization. Yeah. So you can come closer to see the Lord by penance. So our Acharya, which is we are part of Brahma Sampradaya, so he is sharing his realization. So every prayer is very full. Of course, there are 25 prayers in this section. So he says that I see that I'm identifying myself with body and my senses, and I feel very modest or proud, ignoring that you are actually the creator of everything and you are the self. Yeah. And your Lordship is the cause of all cosmic manifestation, and yet you are untouched by the matter. The reason is that the pride comes by the mode of passion. So that's what. Krishna doesn't have six opulence just by chance, yeah, because he's really transcendental to the modes. You cannot be an ultimate renouncer, and unless you are actually above the modes. So going into the purport, Prabhupada starts saying that Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati, because Brahma has now shared his realization because he has performed bhakti, he has performed penance, he's very humble, he's very meek. So that's the first part. So Prabhupada clearly brings home the point that Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati Yavan Yas Chasmi Tattvata. So Yavan means you can know this, yes, this, Cha Asmi, which means with Tattvata, in truth. Yeah. So you can know Lord via being by the bhakti. So that's the first principle which Prabhupada wants to establish. A lot of time people say that His Divine Grace just brings bhakti in every purport of Bhagavad Gita, while there is no mention of bhakti. So I think one devotee was responding that Prabhupada wants to cut the chase. Ultimately, it's bhakti. So before you reach chapter 18 and chapter 17 and chapter 6, he will just make sure that the climax is revealed to you. It's as simple as that. Because the Acharya, he knows exactly. So you may not find it fitting in that purport, but definitely Prabhupada brings it because he sees through what it is. I mean, in that way, even he gave us Krishna book because of course, there are reasons devotees explain, but he also wanted to make sure that the message comes through directly, how to appreciate Supreme Lord. And we know Krishna book is full of philosophy and not just the pastime, because he wanted to bring us closer to Supreme Lord. Even if that means we have to come closer to his pastimes, he wants to do that as early as we can. And we are all allowed to read Krishna book, even though we haven't read through all the other cantos. So that's Acharya's mercy. The next point in the purport is that Lord Brahma became aware of Supreme Lord, that he has many, many eternal blissful forms. Now I think there's a very good explanation that the Lord's form hasn't taken the form of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He has this form. Yeah, he has the form of Shirodaksha Vishnu. He has the form of Karunadaksha Vishnu. He has the form of Narayan. All the Narayans who are in the Vaikuntha Loka. Very nicely, Chaitanya Charitamrita explains 24 combinations of how Narayan holds the Shankha, Chakra, Gada, and Padma. In the order of what it's carried, it actually has 24 combinations or maybe more than that. I think very nicely it's explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So all of these are eternal forms. They are ever existing, and those 24, and Brahma says that Brahma has come to the realization. So we shouldn't again assume that Lord takes a form. He's always having these eternal forms. And the Brahma's prayer, 533 in Brahma Samhita, actually clearly establishes that. Yeah. Then I think the second paragraph has a lot of things to bring forth in this discussion. So one, it says that the only way to understand Lord is devotional service of the Lord or approaching to the devotee of the Lord. So this is a very important aspect which Prabhupada clearly tells us that ultimately you approach Lord through his devotees. Yeah? That's why we approach Lord through Nityanand Prabhu or through Srimati Radharani. Yeah? And not just directly to them, but through the Guru Parampara. Yeah? So that's how we approach the Lord, because the Lord resides in the hearts of the devotee. So I thought of sharing the pastime of Ambrish Maharaj. So maybe I'll come to that. I want to just quickly go through some of the important things which the purport actually talks about. Then it says that by devotional perfection, one can understand that the impersonal Brahma Jyoti is only a partial representation of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So devotional perfection makes you realize that actually the Brahma Jyoti is just a partial understanding of it. Now we have heard these examples in many, many ways. When you see a sun rays in your house, you know that there is a sun. Nobody has to prove you. Yeah? But just getting satisfied that it's all sun rays all over, then it's the wrong thing. Yeah, it stops at sun rays. You don't even acknowledge sun being there and sun globe being there is actually a fallacy. So Prabhupada actually gives this example in a very nice way in chapter. It's in Canto 3. He says that let's say there's a glass of milk lying somewhere. Okay, there's a glass of milk. You can accept that milk through all your senses. So let's say you can accept that milk by touching. You'll know whether it's warm, cold, lukewarm. At least you are getting to know quality of that milk. Okay. Second is you can actually smell it. So you can get a fragrance and you can see how that milk is. Or you can see it and say it's a white material or a white substance or something of and it's liquid, etc. And you can even hear it, because when you shake the milk, you can actually make out whether it's made of powder. At least somebody can make out, or it's organic milk, inorganic milk, or something. So you are accepting that milk, but you haven't actually accepted. We all know, because you are not nourishing yourself. So only when you accept it through tongue, which means you take that milk and take it through, you taste it, and then you sort of take it inside, you actually get nourished. And when you do that, you actually are getting other six also, because when you are touching, you're going to drink it, you of course going to touch it, you're going to see it, and also, unless somebody wants to drink it without after closing his eyes and all, that's a different story. But ultimately, the point was that the ultimate path through which you should accept the milk is tasting it. You cannot just stop at just touching it or just seeing it and just leaving it. So you see that when we try to accept absolute truth, you can accept the absolute truth at the level of mental speculation and stop at Brahma Jyoti. Or you can accept it by meditating, doing Ashtanga Yoga. And you can go up to the level where you think that the Lord is in everyone's heart. But when you accept the Lord through the, in this case, through the tongue, it's the example of milk if I take, then actually you get to know the Lord to the fullest. So that's the thing which Prabhupada sort of alludes in this, that when you have perfection of devotional service, you come to know that Brahma Jyoti actually is a partial representation of the Lord. So, something which we know, of course, with so much of setup which Prabhupada has given us, we don't get entangled into the discussion of Brahma Jyoti, because we have Lord in the deity form, we have devotees, we have all the services. So it doesn't, it appears to be strange that how can somebody get so much, how can somebody take a detour or just stop at the Brahma Jyoti? But it does happen with a lot of, and you can come across many people. I come across a lot of people who treat the Lord as a supreme light or supreme cosmic existence, and for them, if Krishna is taking a form, he's just that super powerful personality who is actually taking a material form. But ultimately, everything is just either it's void or it's just Brahma Jyoti. The next point Prabhupada says, by devotional perfection, one can understand impersonal Brahma Jyoti is partial representation. And then he says that the Lord Krishna and the three Purusha avatar are plenary portions. So these plenary portions, we know this verse. It's It's 1:328 or 38. Ete chams kalacha pumsa. Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. Indriyari Akulam Lokam. Badayanti Yuge. So after describing those 24 expansions of the Lord, which is Narad Muni, Rishabdev, Kumaras, and Lord Balaram and all, Suta Goswami says that these are just the very few incarnation of unlimited incarnation of the Lord. Right? They say that it's like rivulets, it's like so many streams flowing through the big reservoir of the water. So that's what it is. So we in that it describes there are kala and there are pumsa. So amsha. So amshas are direct parts, and kalas are the parts of the part. So we all know that there are direct expansions of the Lord, and then there are kalas, which are basically the plenary portions of the portions of the Lord. Yeah. So these are actually plenary expansion, which is they are like amshas of the Lord, which is the direct expansions. And then it says in spiritual sky, Brahma Jyoti, there is no change of various kalpa. This is the important concept which Prabhupada is bringing up, which I think we've heard a lot of time that in spiritual world, there is no notion of time. Time is, it's absent, it's present through it being absent, right? So it's conspicuous by its absence, which means if you don't see a time, that means there is a time. That's the way you see. So somebody asked actually that, does time exist only when the Brahma is awake? And when he's sleeping, the time doesn't exist? No, time exists. So material world, time always exists. So even when Brahma is sleeping for a day, or the material creation gets unmanifested, goes back to the body of Karanodakshaya Vishnu, which is at the end of the life of Brahma, the time still exists. At least at the end of the day of Brahma, it exists because you need alarm clock, right? So you need the time to keep ticking so that the next part comes. So that interval has to be there. So time is always existing. But Prabhupada clearly says that there is, so Kalpa is the day of Brahma, and we all know the Kalpa, then Manvantras, then there are one Yuga cycle, then each Yuga cycle is, then there's actual cycles, and then there is everything else. So there's no concept of Kalpas, and there is no concept of actually the time in the material, in the spiritual world. So this is something which you have to again very much understand. So if somebody says, what's the reference? At least if not reference, that is where Prabhupada mentions that clearly. So this is where he clearly mentions that actually there is no concept of time in the spiritual world. So I think, of course, devotees ask that whether how doesn't Krishna sleep, and doesn't he go through the actual cycle of the day, and etc. etc. So I don't have an answer for that, but at least what Prabhupada is that all of this are happening ever. Yeah. And Lord doesn't, and there's no angle of creation and all in there. Also, devotee was saying that only in material world there are these three paths of jnana, ashtanga yoga, and all. In spiritual world there is only one path, which is bhakti. Everybody does devotional service, and so that's the only path which is common on both the worlds, spiritual world and the material world. So I thought of sharing this good, wonderful pastime, because we are hearing about approaching the devotees of the Lord. So you approached Lord, bhaktya mama vijanati. Either you approach it through the Lord, or you approach Lord directly, or you approach it through his devotee. And of course, it's always through devotees. So the reason there is a relation between this and the pastime of Amrish Maharaj is that there's a mention about impersonal form of the Lord is not the ultimate form, because this verse establishes Brahma said na ata, which means nothing other than this form which I'm seeing is the ultimate form. So Brahma is authority, and he's making that point. So I'll probably start with the verse which actually explains about, what is the verse which, so it's 9:468, which is the verse which Lord Vishnu says, Sadhavo hridayam mayyam, sadhunam hridayam tuaham, mad anyat te na janati, naham tebhyo manangapi. So basically it's a very beautiful verse. It says, Sadhavo hridayam mayyam, which basically says that the pure devotees are always within me, mayyam. So sadhavo hridayam mayyam. So in my heart, what is there is actually the sadhus who are residing in my heart. And sadhunam, and in the sadhus hridayam, twa means indeed or but, aham, I am there. So I am in their heart, and they are in my heart. So sadhavo hridayam mayyam, which means sadhus are residing in my heart, and I reside in the hearts of the sadhus. So if you ask any sadhu, all he has is, that's why we say, right? If you want to go to Krishna, go to the devotee of the Lord, because he really carries Krishna in his heart. So I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, we see Prabhupada, we see our Guru Word, they carry Krishna in their heart. So we see it. I mean, when we hear them, it's just Krishna coming out from their heart. Yeah. Sometimes we get carried away with perfections and all, but otherwise, if we just keep our critical uh, glasses out, I think they are the ones who can give us Krishna. Then he says Mad Anyat, so it's reinforcing now. So first he says in the heart, in the heart. Now he says what? Mad Anyat Tena Janati. Not just heart, even the brain. It says they don't know anything about, so Mad Anyat. Mad means me, Anyat. Other than me, they don't know anything. And then they say Naham Tepyo Managapi. Similarly, I don't know anything about other than my devotees. Yeah. So Krishna has every other affair to take care of it, but it's delegated to his material energy, right? Which is equally wonderful. So it can even make scientists go circles. Then what to talk about us? We are very basic. So it takes care of it. So Krishna's ultimate thing which he's worried about, or he's just thinking about, is his devotees. So that's a very beautiful verse. This is what Lord Vishnu says to Durvasha Muni. I thought of narrating that pastime because Prabhupada says in this purport, if you just scroll down, it says, Durvasha Muni wanted to chastise Amrish Maharaj. It is to be understood that he wanted to give pain to the heart of the Supreme Lord. That's one thing. But I think somewhere in the purport, Prabhupada says that because he had a very impersonalist view of the Lord, yeah, and hence he did this. I couldn't find that reference, but basically it comes in this purport or somewhere else. But basically, so just to go back to the pastime of Amrish Maharaj, which is a beautiful narration which we can do today, this morning. So Manu had a son called Nabhak, and Nabhak had a son called Nabhag. So Vasudev is the father of Vasudev. Sometimes we think both are same, but that's why it's called Konteya of Kunti. In Sanskrit there is a beautiful way you can grammatically say. So you can actually say everybody can get a name from his father because his son, in a way. That's the way Sanskrit goes, right? So Nabhag had a son called Nabhag, and Nabhag had a son called actually Amrish Maharaj. Yeah, so he's like fourth generation from Manu, and he was very pious king, and he was not at all attached to material things. Yeah, so he was not at all attached to material things. It is said that for him he was like emperor of the king of the entire world, but he did not have any attachment to any material opulences. He was very much down to the earth. And what used to happen was, he performed actually a wonderful Ashwamedha Yajna where he invited. Maybe before I go there, Parikshit Maharaj actually narrates, explains the quality, because as soon as he mentioned about Amrish Maharaj, because in Canto 9 it's very beautiful. I haven't read Canto 9, but I was hearing a devotee giving a summary of it. Because, Bhagavatam describes about 10 topics about Atra Sarga Visarga. So one of them is Manvantaras, and then so basically it describes about all the 14 Manvantaras. So that one Manvantara is being described throughout all the Bhagavatam, and then Sukadeva Goswami had to rush through all the other 13 Manvantaras, or Manus, in the 9th canto. The 9th canto is talking a lot about all the Manvantras. So in one Manvantara, I think Chakshusha Manvantara, the pastime of Gajendra happened. So once upon a time in Trikuta mountain, this happened, and then it goes on. And then every chapter has some pastime which has happened on different Manvantras. So this is a pastime which comes up in one of the Manvantras. And basically, that's where, so which Manu it is? Manu is actually, you can say a common noun, and then there are specific Manus, Chakshusha Manu and Vaivasa Manu and other Manus which are there for all. So, of course, it describes beautiful qualities of Amrish Maharaj, and I think we can recite this 9, 4, 18 to 20, which is, it's a combined verse, so if you put in Veda base, you will probably have to. It's a famous verse which Prabhupada quotes often. I'll recite that, and you can also recite together. Save mana Krishna padara vindayo vacham shivaikuntha gunanuvarnane karo harer mandira marjanadishu shrutim chakara chutastha kathodaya mukunda lingalaya darshane drasho tadbhrit Tyagatra sparshe sanga sangamam granam cha tat pada saroja saurabhe Srimad Tulasya Rasanam Tadarpite Padau Hareshe Trapadanu Sarpane Shiro Rishikesha Padabhivandane Kamam Chadasye Natu Kama Kamaya Yathotama Shokalakana Shrayorati. So in this three verses, the quality and the activities of Amrish Maharaj are described. We won't go through it in one by one, but basically it says, Save Mana Krishna Padaram, in the says, always remembering the Supreme Lord. And then Vachamshi, Vaikunta Gunanu Varnane. So if you know Hindi, Varnan means to describe. So he's always, his Vacham, his speaking power, he's using it to describe the Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane. Karo is the hands, he's using that to Harer Mandira Marjana Dishu. So he's using that to clean the temple. And Adishu, which means all the other activities in the temple. Shrutim, Chakara, Uchyata, Kathodare. So he's also always hearing the glories of the Lord. Similarly, Mukunda Lingalaya Darshanam, Darsho. So he's using his eyes to see the beautiful form of the Lord in the temple. And Tad Britta Gatra Sparshe. So he's using his power of touch to actually serve the devotees. Britta means the servant of the Lord. Kopi Bhartur. For the Kamalya Dasada. The Brat or Bhartu is basically the servant of the Lord. So he is using his power of touch and Granam to accept. He's using that to smell the lotus. Basically, he's using that to smell the tulasi leaves. And Pado, which means his legs, he's using it to make the trips to the Hare Kshetra, which means holy places. Kshetra means the places of Hare. Shiro Rishikesh, and then he always bows down to the Lord and Kamam Chadasya Chatukama. So basically he's using all his so-called material senses, both working senses and knowledge acquiring senses, for serving the Lord. So that's how Sukadeva Goswami describes the glory of Parikshit Maharaj. And finally, he performs the Ashwamedha Yajna, and he very nicely treats all the Brahmanas who came there. He performed this, actually, even his queens were very much devotee of the Lord. He performs this yajna, he performs this at the Madhuvan in Vrindavan. So in fact, there are places in Vrindavan where all these pastimes of Amrish Maharaj appear. There are two spots I can't recognize. Maharaj says in one of the classes, that this is the place where, one place is near Manasi Ganga, near Chakleshwar Mahadev. In that place, there is a place where one of this episode has happened. Because he meets him twice, right? Amrish. So I think we'll just go through the pastime. So basically at that time, he gives away 60,000 cows, 60 crore cows. And these cows are just at the right age. They're just given one calf, and they're full of milk. They're well decorated, their horns have gold plating. And he satisfies all the Brahmanas nicely. And at the end of that, Durvasha Muni comes. And Amrish Maharaj receives him so nicely, seats him down in a comfortable place, and then he sits on the floor actually, and he serves. So the way we see Krishna actually, when Sudama comes, he asks him to sit at the bedstead, and then he sits on the floor and serves him. So similarly, Amrish Maharaj is on the floor and he's asking, how can I serve you? Will you take prasadam? And it was noon time, so Durvasha Muni says, I will go and do my noon duties. He goes to the bank of Yamuna, because it's Vrindavan, and he goes there, he is taking bath, and suddenly he goes into Samadhi. Prabhupada said that he goes into his impersonal meditation. So it's in the translation of that, it comes that he goes into that, and he completely loses track of time. On the other hand, Amrish Maharaj comes to know that there is only one muhurata, which is 48 minutes are left to break the fast. And these 48 minutes are earthly years, because Amrish Maharaj is in the earth, he is still emperor of earth. So he consults Brahmanas and he himself suggests that should I just take a sip of water? And then Brahmanas acknowledge and agrees that yes, it is as good as not breaking fast. So it's as good as breaking fast, but at least also not transgressing the etiquette of eating and all. Of course, we know that this fasting was done for 1 year by by Amrish Maharaj and all his queens. So that happens, and when he comes, when actually he comes back, he completely. So basically, Durvasa Muni becomes angry. And Prabhupada says that he was not satisfied by chastising. So he chastised him left and right. Okay, still he was not satisfied. So he took out a bunch of hairs and he threw it and created a demon called Kritya. And this demon was created somewhere else, and he walked into the palace of Amrish Maharaj and he started attacking him. But Amrish Maharaj is unfaltered, or he's just standing there. Very similar to Prahlad Maharaj, as Prabhupada says in the purports, that he is not at all affected by this demon. So he stands there, and Lord sends his Sudarshan right there. And the Sudarshan was actually coming like a fire. And behind, so he, of course, he vanishes, or he wipes out that demon, and then he goes after the Durvasa Muni. So Prabhupada says, was it the translations or the purport says that it's like, when the forest fire is coming, it will just swap away the snakes, how much fast they can run. So that forest fire was coming like like completely to engulf this Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni was just at the edge. So he goes everywhere. He goes to all the different rulers of the different planets and all. He goes to different caves and mountains to gain protection, but he couldn't. So finally, he goes to Brahma, and Brahma says that actually both me and Lord Shiva and all of us we are just at the order of Lord Vishnu. So if he, with this, I think it says that just by his flick of his eyebrow, he creates and he destroys the whole creation, and all of us. And we all know that all these devatas are created for a day of Brahma. In fact, devatas are created every day. They come up, they set up the administration, and then they go away. So that's our capacity. Then he goes to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva makes the same statement that both me and Brahma are nothing but just the order carrier of Supreme Lord. So you just straight away go to Lord. And then Lord says this, that Sadhavo Hridayam Mayam. And of course, he gives a lot of instructions. There are 5 or 6 verses which Lord speaks about glorifying the position of a Vaishnava. And we also see in Chaitanya Charitamrita that offending a Vaishnava is basically a mad elephant offense, we say. So we have Bhakti Lata Beach, we have just grown our small, Mahaprabhu very nicely described this to Rupa Goswami, that we have this small beach which has been given to us by our Guru, and we are supposed to nourish and then go all the way to the spiritual planet and get the fruit of bhakti, the prema bhakti. But you can actually, you can just vandalize it or completely destroy it simply by doing Vaishnava Aparadha. So it's so important that we shouldn't do that. So he comes back, and then he finally surrenders to Amrish Maharaj. Amrish Maharaj had been fasting for another 1 year, because this whole thing took 1 year. But the lessons which we have is that Lord resides because we heard in this purport that you have to serve the Lord, you have to perform devotional service to Lord or his devotee. So that's where I thought that we can just hear this pastime. So definitely it tells us that we shouldn't take any devotee of the Lord. That's why Mahaprabhu says even somebody chants holy name once, he's a devotee of the Lord. Of course, he goes on and says that if he constantly chants, and then he says, seeing him, other people start chanting. That's the 3 levels. But even the first level is important for us. So we shouldn't have any time criticizing people, because there's so much else to. Material life our life is too small to get occupied with all this. Yeah. I think today is also the appearance of Purushottam Das. I will just speak for 2 minutes. I think Rupa Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Again, I have only read 19 chapters, because Bhakti Shastri allows us to read up to this, but there are more intimate details, and a lot of things are explained on how all the 12 rasas, the 5 primary and the 7 secondary rasas, are exhibited by different inhabitants of Vrindavan. But in that also, Rupa Goswami explains the different types of Sakhas of Krishna. So there are something called as, I think it's called as Prema Sakhas, or very, very, so basically confidential friends of Krishna. So Krishna has friends who are more well-wishers, like Suhrida Sakhas and others. So there's a category of Krishna Sakhas which are basically the Narma Sakhas or Prema Sakhas. So Stoka Krishna is one of them actually. And there are others like Sridhama and all who are very confidential friends of Krishna. So Purushottam Das actually, as per Gaur Deepika, basically from Kavi Karnapur, he's actually Stoka Krishna. And he is also mentioned as, so Nityanand Prabhu, if you see Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, there are primary devotees of Nityanand Prabhu which has been explained. So in the Gaur Leela, he's actually, Purushottam Das is actually one of the primary disciple of, for him. And he had a son called Kanu Mishra or Kanu. And then there's some pastime about it, but just on Purushottam Das, so he was son of Shivadas Puri, if I'm got the name correct. So his father was Chandravali as per the Gaur Deepika and Ganodesh Deepika, and then he himself is actually Stoka Krishna. And it's worth, if we get time, we can read about his pastime. But in brief, today is his appearance day, and he's a special devotee of the Lord. And we all know that all the devotees who are part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela are actually, they all come from spiritual world. They're all associates of Lord Krishna. So with that, I'll conclude today's discussion. The key takeaways for all of us is that all these prayers are beautiful. They may appear to be very dry sometimes. This time I took some effort to go through it and hear a bit more lectures. So I found that they're very comprehensive. They are very deep. They are deep realization. They are not just, that applies to all the bhajans from our acharyas, all the prayers. They are like essence. Because a lot of time, there's a lot of context setting in Bhagavatam, but when these prayers come out, they come out with all the nectar. Of course, even the context is very important. The pastimes are important. But the prayers and instructions are so important. So a few things come out that in this prayer, it is mentioned that the personal form of the Lord is what Brahma is actually glorifying. And then, of course, the other mentions is that we cannot treat Lord Vishnu as the same as others as same as Lord Vishnu, and then there's no concept of time in the spiritual world. And we approach Lord through his devotees. That's very important. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Any discussions, Prabhu? Any comments? Not that. Yes, Prabhu.
In the verse, right, it said that Brahmaji says that your present form of eternal bliss, I do not see a form superior to your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge. So, but that is a bit, not a partial, it's not a completely true statement, right? Because this form is not, there are forms of Lord which are superior to this form also, correct? And then another thing is, which Brahmaji also mentions over here, that he actually mentioned that I am proud of my mortal body and senses. That is something which is, so it's actually a statement in humility that Brahmaji is mentioning that he is proud. Right? Actually not, he is not proud, but he is actually, because of his humility, is mentioning that he is proud. Right?
So the first one, as we have already been, often we have been explained that as you understand the Brahma feature, Brahma Jyoti feature of the Lord, you can only appreciate, because the Lord is Satya Chit Anand. Sat means eternity, Chit means knowledge, and Anand means bliss. So when you approach the Lord in Brahma Jyoti form, the same example of milk, you only can appreciate the Sat quality of the Lord, that is eternal. As you go into Paramatma feature, you understand the second feature, which is that he is full of knowledge. And only when you see the Lord as a person, that's why this verse emphasizes the personal form of the Lord. That's what Brahma is trying to clearly say, that Nata, there is no other form than this form of you as a person. So bliss is actually the Ananda form. So I'm not sure whether I understood your question probably properly, but bliss never means that it's a virtual form. You can only derive bliss when you associate with the Lord in his personal form. So you can appreciate the bliss, the Anand aspect of Sachidanand, only when you are when you're associating with Lord, when you see Lord as not someone who doesn't have variegatedness, someone who doesn't have pastime, someone who doesn't have, so that bliss angle only comes when you see Lord and his activities, which only happens when you treat Lord as, because in Paramatma form, you are not relating Lord as having all the variegatedness, but only when you're relating Lord. Of course, Brahmajyoti is very obvious. But even Paramatma form, do you see Paramatma form? I mean, I know we don't meditate and we don't practice that, but at least we can extrapolate that in that form. So the bliss, again, that's my limited understanding, Prabhu, but I think Prabhupada is often told in his purport that as you go to the next level, it's like, uh, which is the example which I think it's also said that when you go to, yeah, like the example, I'll just draw another example because that, when we have five elements, earth, water, fire, ether, and air. So as you come from the ether, which is and as you come to the most gross form, which is earth, you get all the characteristic of ether. So ether has just the sound quality. Then you have the next one actually is air, which can carry the sound and also fragrance. And sorry, not fragrance. I think air is for, if I'm not mistaken. But as you go to the next one, which is water, and earth, water, fire. Yeah. So as you go to the final one, which is earth, you will have smell, you will have touch. So air is touch, by the way. So ether is sound, air is touch. So you get, when you have air, you get both sound and touch. Then so similarly, so when you see Lord in the Bhagwan form, Prabhupada emphasized knowledge, but that's the angle. And does it answer Prabhupada? Because this was not in the way, at least that's what I understood when I was reading this, that it's not eternal bliss in a way that it's a virtual form or something. It,
The form of Krishna is the supreme form.
oh, I think
In that sense. But over there it is mentioned that this form of Lord is the supreme form, which is actually the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu actually. In that way I was listening.
Okay, that's a good question, Prabhu. Whether it's Garbhodaksha Vishnu or the Krishna form, a two-handed form in the, I think, yeah. So one takeaway we have to the personal form of the Lord is what he's saying, and then Prabhupada clarifies, Advaitam Achyutam Anadyam Ananta Rupam. So that basically says that these personal forms are also not just one; there are many. So Brahma is acknowledging the category of personal form being the prominent, but not so much of this form. Another point, Prabhu, which you mentioned very nicely, that Brahma was never proud, but he's being. So again, this is probably the mood of acharyas. We see all the acharyas, which I mean, that's what I would take it, that they are very humble. Possibly, he may be relating to his attempt to find a source and all, which may count as not proud but inquisitiveness and all, and that's the way we may approach that. So I don't know Prabhu, the exact answer of it, but definitely it probably is the humility, and maybe to show us uh, uh, the mood in which we should approach the Lord. And because he clearly says that, see, I'm seeing you as a creator, and still I'm getting proud of. So that's what we also see a lot of. Prabhupada was saying in one of the lectures that people are so proud they do not accept the authority of God. Don't worry, Prabhupada says, God will come at the time of death. Mrityu aham sarvas. So basically, I will come as the dead, and that time you don't have to argue with me. Of course, rasam apya contest. Basically, you have Lord in the form of water and the taste of water and all. But even if you discount all that, don't worry. At the time of death, uh, what is it book? Mrityu sarvas aham. I forgot that. How did it start? So, in 10th verse, is it in 10th or 11th chapter? Yeah. So it basically said that, yeah. So I, as all devouring death. So, yeah. If no further discussion, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthra Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki